A few days ago, we made a video counting down the 10 best TNA wrestling matches in 2025. Well, now it's time to talk about the matches that could generally be considered the worst for the company in 2025. Side note, we will not be including any matches that took place on NXT for this video. Also, it's worth noting that some of these matches were far from bad, but they ended up here due to the finish being nonsensical or outright terrible. With all of that said, welcome to Lace 'em Up Media, and here are the 10 worst TNA matches of 2025. Number 10. Leon Slater vs. Jevon Evans, Bound for Glory. Spoiler alert, this won't be the last time you'll be seeing Bound for Glory on this list. Because for the amount of good things to come out of this year's BFG event, there also was some stuff that wasn't great, mainly due to the finishes of several matches. Case in point, this first-time ever matchup between Leon Slater and NXT's Jevon Evans for the TNA X Division Championship. Although the action in this match was superb, it's the finish that prevents it from being the best match of the entire card. After taking the action outside of the ring, the bell rings, which leads to the ring announcer explaining that the 20-minute time limit has expired, thus ending in a draw. Realizing that this would be a bad way to end the match, TNA's Director of Authority, Santino Marella, announced that 5 more minutes would be added to the bout. Then a few minutes after this, members of NXT's Dark State storm the ring and attack both men, thus ending the match in a no contest. Chants of "F you Dark State" began to ring out courtesy of the fans, and honestly, who can blame them? Number 9. JDC vs. Leon Slater, TNA Impact, February 20th. Once again we have another great match involving the youngest in charge, only for it to end in such screwy fashion. After getting into the crosshairs of the system, and more specifically JDC, for several weeks, Leon Slater took on JDC in a no disqualification match on the February 20th edition of Impact. The action was really good as both men went back and forth with their offense, and the crowd enjoyed every minute of it, including Leon's signature 450 swanton onto JDC through a table. But just when it looked like Slater was going to pick up the win, the rest of the system come out and put Slater through a table before rolling him back in for JDC to pick up the win. A disappointing finish to a rather good TV match. Number 8. Masha Slamovich vs. Cora Jade, Sacrifice. The rise and fall of Masha Slamovich this year was both sudden and quick, after allegations that painted the former Knockouts champion in a negative light soon emerged, which forced the company to remove Masha from future TNA events. Before all of that, however, her reign as Knockouts World Champion saw not one, but 2 underwhelming title defenses. The first one we'll be discussing here is her title defense against NXT's Cora Jade at the Sacrifice pay-per-view. Going into the match, TNA convincingly painted Cora Jade as a crafty wrestler who's not afraid to use mind games or sneak attacks to get the better of Masha, so hopes were high that the match would deliver. Instead, fans bared witness to a match in which Masha was more effective with her offense compared to the challenger, with Cora wrestling a methodical pace throughout. Jade's most notable moments consisted of her screaming when Slamovich kicked out of pinning predicaments and hitting a Canadian destroyer on Masha, which might just be the sole highlight of the match. Masha would score the win over Jade, in what would be the latter's final pay-per-view match before being released from the WWE in May. Number 7. Tessa Blanchard vs. Gia Miller, Bound for Glory. After months of subtly teasing this match since Tessa's return to the company in December of 2024, the match was finally made at Bound for Glory as Tessa took on backstage interviewer Gia Miller, who came out sort of dressed like former Knockouts champion Taylor Wilde for some reason. For the most part, the match itself was alright, but it was bogged down by the interference of both Victoria Crawford and Jody Threat. Not to mention a monkey flip and later a crossbody from the top rope by Gia didn't look all that great. And finally the match ended with Tessa needing a roll of quarters to knock out Gia for the 3 count to score the win. Let me repeat that, a former TNA World Champion needed to cheat to win a match against a backstage interviewer. No one looked good coming out of this match, and worst of all, they haven't mentioned it on television since the pay-per-view. Number 6. Masha Slamovich vs. Victoria Crawford, Under Siege. In the summer of 2025, former TNA star Robbie E., now Robert Stone, appeared on screen alongside Victoria Crawford, aka the former Alicia Fox in WWE, and announced he was the new authority figure in the company despite no evidence to back this up. Not long after this, Stone decides on the spot to give Crawford a Knockouts title opportunity seemingly for no reason, and again despite no proof of him having actual power. What ensues in this match are nearly 7 minutes of basic, heatless wrestling with an audible boring chant being caught on camera. To be fair, the crowd gives at best a tepid response to the action, but that's really all the good you can say about this contest. The match ends with Masha thankfully picking up the victory, but Crawford, along with Stone, would continue to be a presence in TNA before forming the Diamond Collective with Tessa Blanchard and Mila Moore in the final months of the year. Number 5. Tessa Blanchard vs. Indy Hartwell, Slammiversary. All told, Indy Hartwell's time in TNA hasn't been too bad as she's worked with some of the best wrestlers TNA and NXT has on their roster right now. Her biggest rival to date would have to be none other than former Knockouts champion Tessa Blanchard. Following countless interactions behind the scenes and in promos where they discuss more about their history together, the stage was set for these two to have a barn burner of a match at Slammiversary in front of over 7,000 people in the USB arena. But instead of a barn burner, what we got was an awkwardly worked wrestling match with Indy especially looking almost out of her depth compared to Tessa. Speaking of Tessa, certain sections of the crowd were merciless in their disdain for Blanchard, which further takes away from this match. In the end, Hartwell is able to pull off the upset and defeat Tessa, but the celebration is short-lived as Blanchard proceeds to beat up both Indy and Gia Miller during a post-match interview. This of course would be the catalyst for Tessa and Gia's match at Bound for Glory, but we've already discussed how well that match turned out on this list. Number 4. Rhino vs. Ryan Nemeth, TNA Impact, January 2nd. The first match to kick off TNA Wrestling in 2025 makes it onto this list, and in all honesty it really sets the tone for what the year was going to be like from a creative standpoint. It starts off with Joe Hendry addressing the crowd before he is interrupted by Ryan Nemeth, and the two go at it on the mic for several minutes with Hendry mentioning how Nemeth's attempts at comedy puts him to sleep. It's then revealed that Nemeth is set to have a match with TNA Hall of Famer Rhino, and under the order of Santino Marella, the match is set to take place right now. The action isn't too notable, but the finish more than makes up for that, as Nemeth grabs a steel chair with the intention of using it, only to be stopped by Rhino, who then decides to use it on Nemeth right in front of the referee and getting disqualified like an idiot. This whole thing would be used to set up a tag match between Joe Hendry and Rhino versus the Nemeths on next week's episode, which the good guys would win and serve as Rhino's final match in the company. Number 3. Team TNA vs. Real One, Zilla Fatu and Josh Bishop. Countdown to Slammiversary. In the lead-up to TNA's biggest event of the summer, vignettes began to air on TV, where Real One, formerly Enzo Amore in WWE, began laying out the challenge to the TNA roster to face him and a few of his friends from the Fourth Rope Wrestling promotion at Slammiversary. The challenge was accepted by TNA International Champion Steve Macklin, Jake Something and Mance Warner, all of whom had been feuding with each other over the international title for some time. At the Countdown to Slammiversary pre-show, the TNA stars took on Real One as well as Josh Bishop and Zilla Fatu in 6-man tag team action. There's very little to say about the match as it only lasted 3 minutes and it ends with Warner accidentally hitting Jake, before Real One capitalizes and scores the win for his team. For comparison, the promo Real One cut on his opponents lasted about a minute longer than the actual match itself. Much like the aforementioned Gia vs. Tessa match at BFG, no follow-up ever came from this match, so some of TNA's brightest stars were essentially jobbed out to Enzo and his buddies for no reason. Number 2. Mike Santana vs. Frankie Kazarian, TNA Impact, November 13th. Despite becoming TNA's MVP of 2025, the company's creative team seemingly had no problem punking out Mike Santana, much to the dismay of the fans. Following the events of Slammiversary, where Trick Williams stole the victory to retain his title in Santana's home state of New York, disgruntled fans suddenly had to wait until October to see Santana take on Trick in singles action in the main event of Bound for Glory, with the end result seeing Mike finally win the TNA World Championship. After taking time off the air for 31 days, TNA aired a live episode of Impact on November the 13th in which a match was made between Santana and Ryan Nemeth for the world title in the main event. The match didn't reach a conclusion as a bunch of NXT stars attacked both Nick and Ryan as well as Santana with a steel chair. Suddenly Kazarian and his Call Your Shot trophy came down to the ring, and after laying in his offense on an injured Santana, Kazarian became the new TNA World Champion in a match that lasted about 54 seconds. To say the fans and the wrestling community were pissed by this decision would be an understatement, as it only added fuel to the fire when it came to fan perception toward TNA's creative. While Mike will more than likely win the title back at the Genesis pay-per-view, it still doesn't change the fact this decision was the wrong one to make. But this whole thing wouldn't have happened if not for our final entry. Number 1. The Call Your Shot Gauntlet match, Bound for Glory. And so we end this list with our third and final match to occur at Bound for Glory. And if you thought the reaction online to Santana's title loss was bad, this match was much worse. Like so many others we've discussed here, the overall wrestling isn't the problem here, but the nonsensical booking throughout really hampers this match. Choices like having all of the Rascals enter as one entrant but Sinner and Saint can only choose one of them to be in the match makes no sense. Nor does the moment when Frankie Kazarian suddenly becomes a part of the gauntlet match despite not officially being an entrant and taking Jody Threat out of the match before she even entered. Then there's the weird decision of having Santino Marella in this match, only to play up a gag from 2009 which took place in a different company. And then there's the finish, after narrowing the field down to Nick Nemeth and Kazarian. Both men catch each other in a pinfall attempt where two refs count the fall and debate over which man won. This leads to thunderous boos from the crowd, but the icing on the cake would be Santino's decision to make Nemeth and Kazarian co-winners of the Call Your Shot trophy. This results in the boos getting even louder whilst chants of bullshit could be heard throughout the venue. From cannibalizing the rules to your own match to needless nostalgia entries to a finish that enraged the audience. There was no way this match wasn't going to be number 1. And that's our list. What do you think was the worst match TNA Wrestling had in 2025? Leave your thoughts in the comment section. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more wrestling content. Also be sure to hit the bell so you never miss another one of our videos when it drops.